Welcome to our VirtuaLaw Legal Analysis series. In today's episode, we will discuss the case of Ladonga vs. People, G.R. number 141066, 451 SCRA 673. This landmark case was decided by the Supreme Court of the Philippines on February 17, 2005. Let's dive right into it. Facts. Evangeline Ladonga and her husband, Adrianico Ladonga, were charged with violation of the Bouncing Checks Law, BPBLG 22, for issuing three checks that were dishonored upon presentation to the drawee bank for payment. The checks were issued to Alfredo Oculum, a businessman who had lent the Ladongas P30,302.10. The checks were post-dated, but when Oculum presented them to the drawee bank for payment, they were dishonored. The Ladongas argued that they were not guilty of violating BPBLG 22 because they were not the drawers of the checks. They said that their husband, Adrianico Ladonga, was the drawer of the checks. The Ladongas also argued that they were not guilty of conspiracy because they did not have any prior agreement to issue the checks. They said that they had only learned of the checks after they were dishonored. Issue: whether or not Evangeline Ladonga is guilty of violating the Bouncing Checks Law, BPBLG 22, and conspiracy. Ruling: the Supreme Court found Evangeline Ladonga guilty of violating the Bouncing Checks Law, BPBLG 22, and conspiracy. The court held that Evangeline Ladonga was a co-conspirator in the issuance of the checks. The court found that there was sufficient evidence to show that Evangeline Ladonga and her husband, Adrianico Ladonga, had agreed to issue the checks, even though they knew that the account did not have enough funds to cover them. The court also rejected Evangeline Ladonga's defense of lack of knowledge. The court held that Evangeline Ladonga had a duty to inquire whether or not the account had sufficient funds to cover the checks. The court found that Evangeline Ladonga's failure to do so showed that she was aware of the risk that the checks would bounce. The court's decision in Ladonga vs. People is an important reminder that people who issue checks should be aware of the risks involved. People who issue checks without sufficient funds to cover them may be held criminally liable for violation of BPBLG 22. Key points to remember about conspiracy and the Bouncing Check Law. Conspiracy is an agreement between two or more persons to commit a crime. The crime of conspiracy is punishable by imprisonment of not less than 1 year but not more than 6 years. Conspiracy to commit the crime of bouncing a check is also punishable by imprisonment of not less than 30 days but not more than 12 months. Or a fine of not less than P200 but not more than P2,000, or both. If you are considering issuing a check, it is important to make sure that you have sufficient funds in your account to cover it. If you do not have sufficient funds, you should not issue the check. You should also be aware of the risks involved in issuing a check without sufficient funds. If you are caught, you could face criminal charges. That's all for this episode. Stay tuned for more legal insights in our future episode. Remember, understanding landmark case helps us comprehend the intricacies of our legal system. See you next time. Like and subscribe.